All right, it's ready.
Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Green Infrastructure Roundtable for August. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for coming in. We have a few folks online as well. I'd like to have this as interactive as possible to kick around some ideas and share ideas. Just walking through the agenda quickly, we'll have some news and updates from any of you who would like to share some really cool things that you're doing or have some things you'd like to talk about. And then we'll shift into a discussion on Act 76 and the operation and maintenance initiative that's being developed, because at some point there will be a much more robust operation and maintenance framework for systems around the state, and it's being developed now, so we want to kick around some ideas on that. So I think without further ado, how about we go around the room quickly and just say who's here?
Start with me?
Yeah.
Helen Carr, Clean Water Initiative Program.
V-Trans.
Millie Archer, Vermont League of Cities and Towns.
Justin McGivel, Vermont Youth Conservation Corps.
V-Trans. Natasha Duarte, Composting Association of Vermont.
Peter Lazarchak, Stone Environmental.
Carla Stone Environmental. Lynette Cladone, Clean Water State Revolving Fund.
Mark Companion, Lake Champlain Sea Grant and DEC.
Jordan Geller, Clean Water Initiative Program.
And then online folks, Linda.
Linda Patterson, Lake Champlain Sea Grant.
And Tom, you're muted. Can you unmute and say hello?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Morning.
Tom DePietro. And is that it?
Let's see.
She's checking the...
Oh, no. There are quite a few more.
Oh, quite a few more. Okay. You want to just
Hi,
read?
this is Holden Sparacino, Vermont Association of Conservation Districts.
Oh, thanks, Holden.
All right, we have
And it sounds like Elise is there.
Elise is there,
Elise Shadler.
Chip Sawyer, Ben Copans, Holden Sparacino,
Yes.
and Amanda Ludlow. Okay.
Okay, cool. Welcome, everyone. Thanks. So let's just start with some updates, the ones I have queued up already. The first one, just to let you all know, there is a SALT summit in Lake Placid in October to bring a bunch of folks together in the Lake Champlain Basin on strategies and techniques to reduce salt that will be getting into our waterways. It's becoming an emerging problem. So I'll send out some information through the roundtable with the specifics on that summit so that you can read more about it. And if we could transfer now the screen to Linda Patterson, please. She has a few slides for us. We'll talk about the Raise the Blade campaign she's been working on, which is really cool.
So you're doing the transfer, right?
I didn't know. I didn't know this.
Oh, sorry.
Can you request?
Or am I?
Jordan will transfer in a minute. We're trying to figure out how to do it.
I have to. Oh.
Just right click on her name.
Got it.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my desktop. And Linda, you should be able to share yours now.
All right, share, present PowerPoint file, maybe that's it. Oh, share screen.
Share your desktop or share screen, either one.
All right, and I'll go to all right, let's try this.
Where's the teenager when you need them?
You are presenting primary monitor.
There we go. It's
okay.
There it is.
All right.
We can see your screen.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, we do. You're ready to
Oh my
go?
gosh.
Thank you, Linda.
Wow. Amazing. So hi, I'm Linda Patterson, and one of my projects at Sea Grant has been working with the Healthy Soils campaign, which is under the heading of Lawn to Lake program. And this campaign is called Raise the Blade. It's a social marketing campaign we developed a few years ago, and we are targeting commercial properties, private properties, and municipal properties to encourage them to change the way they manage their lawns. These are our partners. I'm going to move fairly quickly, but you can see that we're coordinating with a lot of different folks, and it's been a great partnership. And the recommended lawn care practices that we're promoting are cut the grass to 3 inches, cut only a third of the grass blade at one time, and leave the clippings on the lawn. And the reason for this is that longer grass means longer roots, which reduces erosion. The roots can reach water in drought, inhibits weed growth. Very importantly, helps to increase soil organic matter, which is a big underpinning of our campaign, which in turn increases permeability and absorption. Why leave the grass clippings? Because they're basically a natural fertilizer, which can help reduce or eliminate the use of chemical fertilizer and therefore of the runoff. Helps to reduce evaporation, which helps in drought. Again, builds that important soil organic matter, and of course it's a financial savings. Why cut only a third? Because it more quickly decomposes to build that important organic matter. It leaves more of the grass blade, which allows more photosynthesis, and the healthier grass blade and the more organic matter helps increase resistance to diseases and pests. And sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. So one of the parts of our campaign is we asked local businesses to give us some space on their properties to do some research. And we had great response. We've got all these businesses, and they offered enough space so we could have 3 different sections, and one we're mowing at 1, another at 2 inch, and another at 3. And we're in our 3rd year of our demonstration research. And this is part of how we do the research. We measure the absorption rate and the amount of water. But we're also following how healthy the grass looks, and we're beginning to already show some differences in appearance. And then another thing is that Chris and a bunch of other folks created these giant root boxes, and behind there's doors on the front, and we take them to all our public demonstrations, and you can open the door and see the difference in the root length depending on how long the grass is, and it's a real crowd pleaser, real graphic way of showing what we're trying to educate people about. Another thing is, and this is my particular part of the campaign, I'm bringing on businesses to join the campaign because we think it's not only a great way to encourage businesses that have a lot of lawn area, but also a great way to reach the public. So I've got over 10 businesses so far that have joined us. They are following the practices. Most of them are agreeing to post our sign by their sign, and as you can see at Lake Champlain Chocolates and several others, they're on really high traffic areas. So customers and just walkers by are seeing the sign. If they go into the store, they are getting a rack card because they're displayed on the counter. And these rack cards show why the company has joined the campaign, describes the purpose of it, and then on the backside gives the client or the customer a way to get in touch with us if they want to join the campaign or get more information. So that's been a super great way to reach people. And it also looks really good for the businesses. And then we also have a way of publicly thanking the businesses. Hickok Boardman, which is a huge real estate company, just recently joined us. So we give them a shout out on our Facebook page, which they love. And then we will also link to their Facebook page. So it's just more publicity and more spreading the news about the practices. We do have the Lawn to Lake website, and so clients, customers, businesses, anybody can go to this website and get lots of different articles and related websites around everything related to healthy soils, phosphorus, and our healthy lawn tips. So that's been a really great resource for people. And on that website, we also, give a shout out to the businesses that have joined us. And what I think are the key elements of our campaign are, we did do a survey, which I didn't have time to talk about, but we identified what would draw people to changing their lawn care practices. And their priorities are, it's good for the lawn and it's good for the environment. So we use those in our messaging. And then having the research to support our message has been really important. The social media recognition I just mentioned. And then because we have so many different avenues for getting this message out, it's been really helpful. the businesses. We do newspaper articles. We submit things for various online newsletters and blogs. We were in the Shelburne Farms blog recently. We do a lot of tabling at community events, and I do presentations at meetings, Rotary clubs and business meetings and things like that. So it's been a really fun campaign, and we're slowly but surely, I think, getting the word out, and people are beginning to say, yeah, I've seen your sign and I want to know more about how to care for my lawn in a way that's good for stormwater runoff. And I'm kind of calling it our mini GSI campaign because, you know, it's a small approach, but it's important. So that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Linda. And there are two other cool aspects. I mean, one is you have rack cards on new lawnmowers, correct?
Oh yes, we have. I wanted to keep the presentation short, but we have hanging tags on brand new lawnmowers at the hardware store that we're partnering with. So if someone buys a new lawnmower, they're getting the message right away.
And one other thing I heard you talk about a while ago is that some people might think that their lawnmower is set at 3 inches, but it's actually not. So there's sort of a calibration or an understanding of really how tall their mower is set.
Yeah, what's been interesting, Mark, is that I've talked to a lot of lawn care companies because they're often the people we need to really reach, although we need the okay from the business who uses them. But yes, there's been a few companies that have said, oh yes, we follow those practices. We know they're the best for the lawn, and sort of secondarily, they're good for stormwater absorption. But when they measure their grass, even though their machine is set at 3, it's not accurate. So in one machine in particular, we found we needed to raise the calibrator to 4 inches just to get the 3 inches. So it's definitely important on the commercial lawnmowers and on people's individual lawnmowers.
Thank you, Linda. Any thoughts or questions for her?
I've noticed on my own lawn mowing that I wish it would go higher. It's in the highest setting. And
Yeah.
you put bigger wheels on it, maybe.
Yeah, that's it. Others? Thank you, Linda. That was great.
Okay, thank you.
Could we shift the microphone to Elise Shadler? Elise, I don't think you have anything to show visually, just to talk, correct?
Yeah, no, can you guys hear me?
Oh, we can hear you, then we're fine. We got you. Way to go.
Okay, great. I'm awkwardly hiding in a hallway on campus because I have a meeting in a couple minutes. But I just wanted to say hi. My name's Elise Shadler. For those of you I don't know, I am the new program manager for the Urban and Community Forestry program. So I'm taking over for Danny Fitzko, who is now the director of forests for FPR, if you weren't aware. So I just quickly wanted to review a grant program that we've been working on for the past couple years. And I'm sure Danny has talked about this with this group in the past. We received a grant from the Forest Service, probably 2016, called the Resilient Right-of-Ways Grant. So we've been working on this project in 2 buckets, one on the rural side and one on an urban side. So the overarching goal of the project has been to help towns increase capacity to manage for water quality and have more resilient public right-of-way spaces. And parking spaces and incorporation of GSI in those urban areas. So on the rural side, we've been working with 10 towns to do these really in-depth roadside vegetation assessments, and then a follow-up of a series of maps about what we find, what are the common patterns around invasive species, around what kind of forest cover, around erosion issues, et cetera, and then writing an action plan for each of those towns. And then on the urban side, Millie Archer, who's actually apparently in the room, hi Millie, and myself and Holly Greenleaf, who many of you might know as well, have been working with 10 towns in the Champlain Basin to help them basically increase their internal capacity for GSI. So this is done through 2 ways. One, a bylaw review of any ordinances or public work specs or policies they have within the town, or maybe that they're developing, that have any kind of water quality issue or are regarding water quality and water management in any way. So Millie does that for each of the towns. And then on the other side, Holly does a series of photo visualizations for the towns based on any kind of goals or projects they're working on. So she might, for example, in Shelburne, she was helping them promote and get support for the renovation of their library and their public offices. And so she worked to do some photo visualizations of what the GSI that they wanted to incorporate into that project would look like. In other towns, she's basically just creating a photo visualization of what a regulation or a provision in some ordinance or some specification actually looks like on the ground. So instead of just words on a page, people can actually look and see what it looks like. So that's our project, and I just kind of wanted to share about it. And then the last thing I'll say is that we developed the Vermont Green Streets Manual through this project. And if you haven't seen that, I put a link in the chat box for the online version of it, which is accompanied by a series of videos that are narrated by people that were involved in the project. But I also have many, many copies, hard copies of the book. So if you're interested in getting some copies, I'm happy to get them to you somehow. I'm based both in Montpelier and Essex Junction. And then we are contracting with Becky Tharp this year to do some targeted outreach at workshops and events that are happening statewide so that we can get this in the hands of the target audience, which are really local leaders, municipal staff, people that are really trying to push green stormwater infrastructure locally. So that link and then also the link for the Resilient Right-of-Way project in general is in the chat box. And that's all.
Thank you, Elise. Any thoughts or questions for her? Millie, contributions for your part? No? Okay, thank you. Any updates from folks in the room? We'll just try to, and then we'll reach out to folks online afterwards. Or ideas or things you want to share?
So we've been having a draft policy document for the last 2 years on eligibility in the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for landscaping elements. I think it's really important with our transition to having more green infrastructure and being able to define what's landscaping, what's green infrastructure, and I think the intended purpose. So I've been thinking about sending that out for comment through the roundtable, and I'm just curious if you guys are interested in that.
Thank you, Lynette. Anything else?
Not super exciting, but some folks may have noticed constructed gravel wetlands going in Williston and Allen Brook, Watershed, impaired portion as a retrofit on I-89.
How far along are those?
They're pretty far along, yeah. Not sure when it's supposed to wrap up, but pretty soon. Also expanding the detention pond at the welcome center or the information center.
Very cool. Want to talk about your engagement at the credit union?
Yeah, sure.
Justin from VYCC?
A really cool project that we just wrapped up and is functioning. A rain garden fire retention system at the VSCCU building. We partnered with Equilibrium Landscape Design, with the Conservation Commission in Montpelier. Lots of really interested folks. It's a really great sort of high visibility project right there on Bailey Ave. So it's a great success, I think, for building those partnerships, and excited, a lot of energy around more of those sorts of installations in Montpelier and around the state. So hoping to continue building VYCC's capacity to do that work and be involved in those projects, and excited about the potential for this operations maintenance. So it's a great sort of kickoff. Learned a lot of valuable lessons there. So
And your crew was awesome.
Yeah, they were great. They worked hard. They pretty much hand dug about 30 cubic yards of soil.
Soil is a generous term.
Yeah, it was mostly gravel than clay. Character building, that's what we're all about. Accomplish those goals.
Thank you, Justin. Other updates or ideas, or how about from folks online? Anything you want to share with the rest of us? Unmute yourself if you've been talking, please.
Hi guys, this is Tom. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Tom DePietro.
Hey guys, I wanted to let you know Green Mountain Water and Environment Association is putting together a full-day technical training on the Vermont Stormwater Manual. If that's something that folks are interested in, I put a link in the side message bar on the screen here.
Very cool. And then I can forward that out to the entire roundtable.
That'd be wonderful. Thanks, Mark.
Mark, I just thought of something.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. So one of the things that I do here at Sea Grant is to facilitate the creation of and dissemination of continuing ed workshops for realtors. And we work very closely with DEC, and I'm trying to get approval for a new course that combines both information on wetlands and on stormwater rules and regs and GSI. Our first time around, it was denied. They're very strict about what constitutes something related to a realtor's activity, but I have a lot of realtors supporting me, so just wanted to give you a heads up that we are trying to educate realtors about GSI and stormwater management, and I'll keep you posted.
Great, thank you.
Hey, this is Dan Albrecht from Chittenden RPC.
Hi, Dan.
Kind of a large-scale green infrastructure project, but if anybody's driving through Underhill and you go right by the town office there on Pleasant Valley Road, it's a clean water block grant project, but it's under construction now. It's a rather large bioswale. But it's not. Yeah, I guess it's a bioswale. I don't know. Large rain garden right at the parking lot next to the town office, and they're going to put some gutters into on the buildings to direct more of the flow there. So that project's probably under construction right now. So
very cool. What else?
We're going to talk about construction projects. We're working with the city of Winooski right now. There's a weekly meeting at 11:30 to upgrade a detention pond at the south end of cul-de-sac in the Morehouse Brook watershed. It's a flow restoration planning project that is well underway at this point. It includes both upgrades to the pond and the curb extension bioswales in the right of way of the street contributing so that we get both cost reduction and that is ERP primarily.
And Burlington is fairly well along to start its Great Streets project in downtown. Does anyone know more about that? Basically, the downtown core will have a lot of bump outs and really interesting natural features brought into the streetscape.
The section between St. Paul, between Lane and King, I think, is almost done. Which is super routine.
Yeah.
Definitely the street I think is still closed, but definitely you can walk down it.
You can see the curb ready to be
You can see
planted.
the curbs, they're ready to be planted. The tree trenches are in. And the last time I was there, which has been a couple of weeks, at least one side of the street is basically done. Like the trees are in, the finish is in, it looks great.
Yeah. It'll be amazing when that whole area is greener. Yeah. Great streets.
This kind of fits into the group discussion, but
Sure.
So for VTrans on the maintenance side, of things. I cover the Northeast region, and we have 2 projects going on at Willoughby. So there's 2 pull-offs, and there's kind of social paths going down for where people swim with fish on Willoughby. And we partnered with Northwoods. They're creating these like erosion control walkways to allow people to still access, but stop it from having your own social path going down and all the erosion that comes with it. So protecting our road, protecting the lake. And the best part is that we don't want to advertise for people to go there, so they've been able to do plantings and different things, but if people were stopping there anyway, they would see it and be able to navigate that way and then move along the lake if they wanted to. And then for our garages, we're actively looking at multiple sites around the state for where we could do improvements at our facilities since they're bigger parcels and cleaning up our yards a little bit.
Very cool. Sounds like a neat project.
Yeah.
Anything else from folks? Okay. Thank you so much. Let's shift into the Act 76 operation and maintenance discussion. As I mentioned in the invitation to this, Act 76 will change the way that projects are funded. The service providers will be created in the basins or watersheds of impaired waters, and those service providers will be responsible for all aspects of project identification, implementation, and oversight over the long term. And DEC is now beginning to figure out how to actually make that new system work. I have here Helen Carr and Jordan Geller, who've been working closely on a lot of different aspects of it, and they'll help us understand some of the things that are going on that they're working with, and then we can shift into a conversation on various aspects of operation and maintenance to get some ideas of what you folks think and what might be a great way for DEC to think about proceeding on some of these initiatives. And then we'll keep everybody informed in the months and year or so coming as to how things are shaping up. Shall I just hand over to you, Helen? Jordan?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. Just let me know when to switch.
So Jordan and I, hopefully everyone can hear me. It's your computer, right?
Yeah.
Jordan and I have been working on kind of a pilot BMP verification program since Jordan started as an AmeriCorps in 2017, fall 2 years ago now. So we've been developing a program to go out and look at BMPs that have been put in, kind of, focused on the ones that we've funded through state funding, and make sure they're still in operating order. People have been at least maintaining them to an operational state. So yeah, I'm gonna go. We'll talk about the program a little bit, and feel free to ask questions. But wait, go back. So these are some of the goals of the as we've been developing the program, to basically verify that the projects have been implemented, the ones that they say they've been implemented in our system. So verifying that, making sure they're operating, and along with that is we are tracking these towards the Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog TMDLs, which are focused on phosphorus. So we have a method of estimating phosphorus reduction based on specific BMP types. So we want to make sure that, when we say these projects are meeting a certain level of phosphorus reduction, that it's true from what we can see. So that's an important part. But another piece of this is to kind of educate partners on what it means to operate and maintain your BMPs, and we want to just increase public confidence that the practices that we're paying for with state dollars are lasting as long as they can. Okay, next slide. So there are certain project types that we focus on more so than others. Some of them may not need a lot of maintenance in operation and upkeep, but certainly stormwater projects do need maintenance and inspections. So we tend to focus on stormwater projects, also river planting projects, road projects need maintenance too. And then a lot of lake shoreline projects are similar to stormwater projects. So those are the ones we are focusing on. A lot of times the other project types have another way that they're verified. A lot of rivers projects are kind of leave it alone and let the river do its thing. So there's not a lot of maintenance involved, although it's good to inspect it every once in a while. Yeah, next slide. So as a part of this, we've developed a more standardized template for operation and maintenance plan, and also an operation and maintenance agreement. So in the past, we've had a requirement in our grants to submit an operation and maintenance plan, but it's always kind of come in different types and different forms. It's not really always clear. So we've developed this template. It really just lets us know who is the responsible party for maintaining the practice, and or the landowner if they're different, where the BMP is, what's the useful life approximately of the BMP, and then it allows you to kind of list different maintenance items. So depending on, it could be a variety of things depending on the type of BMP, and it lets you kind of fill in that. So either the engineer would fill in that as you're, towards the end of your construction phase, or even in the final design phase, they should know what you would need to maintain it. So yeah, we've started requiring these for our grants now. It's up on our webpage under our grants. Under our Clean Water Grants webpage, and it's under documents that are related to grants.
We can send out the links after.
We can send out a link if you want. But yeah, I think it's going to be helpful moving forward once we start getting these in, and just knowing who to contact if there is an issue is helpful. Yeah, next one. So this is kind of also attached to it. We wanted there to be some kind of agreement between the responsible party and us as the funding entity. So this is what we came up with. It just outlines exactly what we kind of expect from the responsible party. They're agreeing to maintain the practice according to the plan. They're agreeing to repair any damage to the practice. Yeah, and they're also agreeing to let DEC staff, with notice, go on and look at the BMP. So that is. Okay, so getting into our program that we've developed and site visits that we've kind of piloted them this past year or so. This is kind of, we'll go through our process for doing it. It's a little bit of a process. It's good. So we first choose a location based on priority. So we do have a map of all the BMPs that have been completed from our funding sources. We can kind of choose based on our priority. We want to look at ones that are a little bit older that haven't just been installed, so we can see the upkeep. From there, we'll gather any. Sorry, let me take a drink. Voice is going. From there, we'll gather any contact information that we might need for who the landowner is and also who the grantee is. We give them about a couple weeks in advance so that we can reach out to them. We will reach out to both the grantee and the landowner if it's on private land, especially. But we let them know when we're coming, what exactly we're doing, and make sure we have that kind of permission to go on, any private land. That's all done in advance.
Also, to add on, we also reach out to schools. A lot of schools are public, but we want to just make sure that we're not there when the kids are there, or just check with the school that we're able to go onto the property during school hours or after. All right. So there's a whole process to this BMP verification program. So Helen described a little bit in detail about how we plan. We look at a map, and then we look at a map, we prioritize projects, and once we plan all the projects, we go out and inspect, and we collect information on an app we developed, checklist we developed in an app called Survey 123. So we use a map called Art Collector, which has data points of every project that is funded by the Ecosystem Restoration Program. And we are able to go out in the field with our phone, and it locates where we are. You click it, and then it pulls up in the maintenance checklist based on what kind of project it is. And then we fill out all the information on Survey 123, take pictures, all that, and we upload it. And after we upload it, we might be in like remote areas where there's not service. So we'll upload it, and then we'll go back after, make sure everything's on the site and analyze the data, fill in any gaps if we weren't able to upload the data in the field. And then if there's any issues, if the BMP gets a bad score, we have a score which I'll describe in a little bit, then we'll do some follow-up to either the grantee or the landowner, provide them with proper resources. We're in the midst of kind of creating some fact sheets on different maintenance items for different types of BMPs, how often and how frequent to maintain, and different maintenance activities. So that's just the overview. A little bit more into the Survey 123 mobile application. Before I go into that, I'm just going to exit out of the presentation for a second and bring up the map, which is what I was describing before. So this is our map of all of our projects. We update it once a year, so it's not live. And this is a buffer planning we went to. So we go out in the field and we'd essentially have this on our phone. And we'd click launch riparian buffer checklist, and it'd pull it up in the app. And I have the app right here. So it would pull this up on your phone, and it would ideally fill out all the project information. This just isn't pulling it up because I'm on the computer. And it goes through BMP type, all of that. So we go through and we fill all of this out. Let's see if I can scroll down a little bit. Inspection date and time. We check if it exists. We verify that the lat long is correct, because sometimes it might be a little in a different place than we think. And we go through this checklist. And basically, as we go through its scoring, we set different scoring criteria. And how we did that was we met with a bunch of different stakeholders before, partners, just to make sure we had the correct questions for each practice. And then based on that, we have a scoring range from 1 to 5. And I'll get into that in a little bit. I think that was most of it. Okay. So then that was, the one I pulled up before was a buffer planting project. And this is just us out in the field. We were actually talking to the landowners, who were super nice. And we were measuring, Helen's measuring buffer width on that end, and I'm on the other. getting an average, and that's just a nice established site. They have a pollinator garden, and it's really, really pretty BMP we visited. So after all that happens, and we upload the data, QA/QC, we get a project report. So that just shows, it's essentially all the data we collected in like a nice form that we're able to see. And this is just an example of one of the ones we saw. It gives the BMP type, project name, the completion date of the project, and the inspection date and time. The inspectors and lat long, and then we get like a general picture. We want to make sure we get pictures of these sites. It looks a little wonky in this report, but you get the idea. So it automatically does the average buffer width and answers some simple questions like making sure that the plants are healthy. There's greater than 35 feet of buffer if there are any invasive species, and then it gives you a score at the end. So this one got a 4. That's the highest score. And the scoring grades are optimal, functional, marginal, compromised, and failed. So 0 through 4. 4 is like the best you could do, and then 0 is failed. It's likely not there, or it's like if it's there, it's hard to tell it's there, or it needs very large repairs. So luckily we haven't gotten any of those yet. And I think to date we've done about like 25-ish BMP inspections. So we're still in the middle. We have a lot more to do, but this is some of the data that's come up so far based on the sites we visited. And this pie chart right here this is just on the stormwater. So I was showing you riparian buffer checklist. The stormwater one has a bunch of different practices, and based on the practice, it will have different questions. So like bioretention might not have the same questions as porous pavement. So it'll filter based on the different type of BMP. And as you can see here, most of the ones, 50% of the projects that we've gone to, stormwater ones have been bioretention. And then this is just a nice graph for riparian buffer plantings, and it shows the average buffer width. So most of our plantings are between 28 and 46 feet, and we have some that go all the way up to 118 feet. So it's just a cool visual of all the data that we're collecting.
I think, I think the majority of the projects that we've been to have been in really good shape.
Yeah,
right?
I think maybe one has had a 2, and that was like.
Right. So like that's a good sign.
It's a really good sign.
25, but a lot of times they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Would you like some questions?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
It looks like about, what'd you say, half for bioretention, and you're saying that they're in generally in pretty good shape. Are they organizations that actually have maintenance contractors taking care of them?
I'd say it's a mix.
I mean, somebody's taking care of them if you guys are reporting that they look good, right? Or
Well,
are they
yeah,
just-
somebody is.
But some are a little bit older and they don't have those, because we just came up with that O&M template.
Right, the O&M template. But I think he's asking if the business or landowner contracted with some company to help them maintain it.
I would say it's a
that's
mix.
sort of my question. I know in
Yeah.
my experience, the ones that have been maintained well and actually have a
Mhm.
landscaping company actually taking care of them
Yeah.
tend to be
I mean,
at least aesthetically looking.
I would say the ones that are like at the top, like 4s, just from what I've seen, like a lot of schools that have like
Yeah,
a whole
there's-
maintenance crew and everything, like
Right.
those are just like
School-
exceptional. But
Right, or like a public right away, or I'm trying to think of other bioretentions that we've gone to. But yeah, it's likely that either a town or a school would have a maintenance crew of some kind.
But even if they
Either
don't,
way, it's-
they've been
it's
pretty,
encouraging what you're finding. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it is actually.
none of them have been like shockingly, they're all like
None
really
of them have
pretty
been
good.
terrible, yeah.
And is this a process that will continue to be done internally only, or might there be people hired to broaden the access to these different places?
Yeah, so So I guess like the next step to this is as you've talked about Act 76, we're moving towards this model where we have clean water service providers that will be overseeing different watersheds within the basin and the state. And the O&M responsibility for these non-permitted projects is going to now fall on the clean water service providers. We're kind of right now in the process of figuring out how to exactly give them that responsibility, but also be able to collect the data that they're seeing.
Any ideas on that
Yeah.
aspect? If this task is done in part or entirely by service providers, how to manage that process and integrity of data, DEC getting what it needs. Any ideas of what might work? Or
It'd probably be like like the permit programs where you rely on a stormwater professional to sort of do the inspections and sign off on them.
Mm-hmm. Could it be something like the MRGP road erosion inventory where the town road crews are part of the team doing those inventories and verifying the condition of the road segment as it is currently and coming up with those inventories, and not just that, but also prioritizing. Like I feel like there could be some good sort of nexus and opportunity to share both methodology and sort of resources, because they have an app. There's a couple apps.
Yeah.
You have an app.
Yeah.
And those are great tools both for you guys to be able to see what's going on in near real time if you want to.
Right.
And not want to.
Right.
But it also, I think that sort of back-end data management and QA/QC is really important, because if you get our hands super fast, as more and more people, more and more clean water service providers, potentially more like that you could also have a public engagement piece of that eventually down the road, where like some of our larger municipalities have report pothole apps.
Yeah.
If you see a problem, say something.
Yeah.
That could be a piece of it.
I'm really curious how that's going. Like,
They could shut down.
Oh no!
I don't think it worked as intended, because we got like 500 comments about one pothole. Even once it was fixed, we still had comments about it. So I think it's still out there, but I don't know if it's really out there. Probably need it now.
So engage folks would be the most helpful way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burlington has one, I think.
They have an app of some kind, a report, like a kind of
I
a
think
complaint app. It is always like a
quick fix.
I think
if
they
you-
pay for it too if you get any car damage.
Part of the problem too is that, like the structure internally of how a comment would come in and then the chain that it would follow by the time it got to somebody else, like it might have already been done and then they're getting the response because that comment was submitted yesterday, they did it this morning, but they didn't get the actual like work order until the following afternoon.
Yeah.
So then the response back was, we already did it.
Yeah.
So it didn't
Yeah.
function, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. A lot of these are like hidden in plain sight though. Like, I don't know if the public knows there's necessarily like a rain garden or something. They don't think like, oh, this looks weird. But I think it would be a good idea to have like something for people to report if they see an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that could be down the road as more and more of these, and the ERP, I feel like the stormwater BMPs, there's some requirements in the grant about signage.
Yep.
And if there could be something added at closeout, that there's actually a number for this BMP that goes on the sign, and then there's an app.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think we had.
This is where this is what we know about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you see something, let us know. I have a ton of questions about the O&M agreement, because I know those have been administered in a lot of different ways over the past several years. And some of our partners actually have O&M agreements that the owner of the BMP signs with that organization instead of with DEC. So I'm curious about how you see that changing, and what the ultimately probably the clean water service provider responsibility is versus DEC's responsibility.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That's something that's come up before, and we're still kind of figuring it out, I guess.
It's pretty new.
Yeah, it seems like we've gotten some pushback on like providing the partner providing the actual landowner information to us, but I don't really know what the right answer is if we want to be able to go and kind of just verify it. Or, I mean, maybe the answer is that we outsource the app and the program to watershed groups or clean water service providers, train them on what we're looking for, and have them report back. I think there needs to be, if we can't,
there's a better relationship, I guess, between the partner and the landowner. So we were talking about just the other day how if we could train the partner and we wouldn't have to get this information or go out to the landowner, because we already now are having a hard time contacting the landowner. And if we can't contact the landowner, we don't go. So I think if we were to create that like bridge and the partner could do it, it'd create a little bit more trust, and we could have a training or like an annual training and record it. So different watershed groups and different organizations would be able to.
You probably don't want to have to verify
everything.
All these
No,
BMPs.
I mean it is.
Most of which are in service to a pollutant reduction target that are not required by a permit.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's tricky because there's not really.
Super tricky.
We don't really have. We're seen as a regulatory entity, but we don't really have teeth. Because it's not regulatory. I mean, we just have our funding as the incentive.
That's a piece of it too.
I wonder if I could move on this for hours, and that's probably not the best use of our time, but I feel like that would be a great place for us to have more.
We should talk,
Yeah, definitely. We should talk more about that.
Okay. That would be good.
Awesome.
Any other thoughts on the verification and monitoring of the app or use and how it could be rolled out or more effective?
Great.
Is the app only available internally to DC staff right now?
Yes.
Because of our GX licensing.
Well,
now it is.
I think it might have to continue to be, just because it's a license and each user you have to pay for. So I don't necessarily know how that would. How do they do it?
But the MRGP does it.
Maybe they all use the same login. Not sure.
They do.
They give out one login.
Yeah, they give out one login.
So that could be an option too.
And I think as we're talking about wanting to train these contractors and folks that are doing the operations maintenance and sort of standardize that, I wonder if that can be a component of that O&M of during the maintenance you submit this data. It could probably work in some sense where there's one group working on a lot of these installations with convenience with it might there would be those one-offs would be hard for folks to use that app. If you're just visiting one site one time.
Right.
Could be options.
Yeah, I mean, we had an idea to possibly partner with a program like VYCC to train you guys on doing on like an app or at least what we're looking for in our verification checklist, and maybe clean water service providers could partner with you and help do because they're going to have a pretty big piece of work to do related to the O&M, depending on how we set it up. But that was one of the, I don't know. Again, we're still developing, but
Also
we need
geographically,
a mini army.
geographically, it's hard for us, like just me and Helen, to get like all throughout the state. So it would be, yeah. I mean,
the same day.
On the same day.
we could try.
Are you doing any research at all on actual phosphorus removal or partnering with UVM or anybody on that? Or
We do.
Is it just kind of assumed?
It's kind of just like a visual inspection. That's the whole idea behind
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Our app is just visual, 'cause that's what we can do. I think there's some monitoring programs that out there that are looking at specific BMPs, and I think testing phosphorus.
I think it's hard. There's like certain funding towards it, and it's a big project to do to just go to one BMP.
Right.
And
so we have to assume all the other ones like
we're getting like a baseline visual inspection through this because it'd be pretty hard to.
It's hard to retrofit a BMP to do research on until you kind of build it in initially.
And it's
I'm curious if your maintenance and inspection plans and checklists are going to be used by the stormwater permitting program as a template or anything like that.
There's the newer stormwater manual and stormwater rule have some resources about O&M plans and verification of BMPs that you have to do when you recertify. And I wonder if there's some crosswalk there that could be helpful.
I think we did use that.
I say probably good.
Right.
As you embark on this visual indicators of whether or not a BMP is working or not, I assume you know about all the visual indicator stuff that's come out of the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We use that. UNH Stormwater Center has a lot of really great visual indicators, and just like their SOP, standard operating procedures, was helpful, like for us developing our maintenance checklists and.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, John, you were talking about the phosphorus reduction benefits of different BMPs, and it reminded me that we have that new research project that's just starting up with that Rumpel.
Oh, yeah.
Collaboration between NR and V-Trans. What phosphorus reduction benefit can we actually get from fixes to localized erosion problems? So more to come.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, that'll be great to know.
We actually, we talked with Beverly and Joanne Garden, who she did a forestry BMP kind of similar program, and we talked to her about that when we were first starting up to see like what worked, and that was pretty useful.
How are you involved with that? Are you good? I'm just curious.
I'm part of the technical advisory committee.
Okay.
Cool.
I wonder if we should mention the RFP that we're going to put out, Mark. Or should we wait?
I guess we just say that there will be an RFP issued to look at a couple of different things. One is to develop a manual for maintenance, or pull together the information that will eventually be parked into a manual. And then the other is to get a better handle on the cost per unit of these systems. Dollars per pound, dollars per acre, etc. It's kind of a tricky thing to really pin down, but I think DEC wants to update its understanding of how these systems are doing in terms of cost per unit of whatever.
Well, I guess part of the reason behind it is that we need to develop a system to pay clean water service providers. We'll fund them to do work, but how do we know how much to fund.
How much will
More than you think.
how much will their allocation be?
You've got to
And
value
so-
project planning as much as you value the performance of the BMP.
Yeah.
That is a big problem that we have. Right
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
going to be hard to get. There was a study out of, I think it was Maryland, about cost per unit for BMP
yeah.
implementation, and it was super inconclusive because it's hard to get those costs and hard to understand the true costs of the BMP, especially after it's done. Nobody wants to go back into their files and tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
However, this project that just wrapped up at VSECU will be a great case study for that because they were pretty careful about documenting.
Yeah.
And it was the planning piece is a greater piece of the cost almost every time it's a retrofit. And it is super not completely valued in our project planning and implementation process. So
Okay. Yeah.
that would be a fantastic case study because it's fresh and the files haven't closed yet.
Great. Good to know.
But multiply that by the hundreds of BMPs that we've already constructed.
Yeah.
And there's hundreds and hundreds more that we can do. This is a great opportunity to get a better handle on that.
Yeah. Totally. We would like to get a cost estimate for each BMP type, the planning, the design, and the implementation of it.
For like different asset lives used for EMPs and that based on the O&M that the asset life can be extended or not or short based on whether the O&M is performed. And I'm really curious if you're also considering
Yeah, that's.
asset life is so important in understanding the cost effectiveness of the practice.
That's a component of the RFP is the design life. What is a likely design life of a particular BMP? Can we really pin that down? If it's maintained, I was also proposing for this RFP, it would be ideally, I don't know if we could get to it, if there was a curve where you could track design life, maintenance not happening, or this not happening, or that not happening, you could just see. But, I don't think the data would be able to have that much accuracy. But how might design life change if certain things are done or not done, so that we can estimate the life of these systems?
How do you set your data management system up now so that you can track that and adaptively adjust over time? That's the real question.
Yeah.
And this RFP may represent an opportunity to set that asset management system up while we still have a chance to get our arms around it before we have so many practices, so many places that we.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a lot already.
Yeah. So we have a good base to work on.
Yeah.
So what did we get from that? What are we already still learning from it? How can we adjust what we're already collecting?
Yeah.
Are we collecting the span number for the parcels?
The what?
Span number,
We're collecting a lat long as much as we can. For anything that's on the ground, we'll have a lat long.
So the span number does directly link up to the tax department databases and list information. So it might be
as our person continues to get better, we could use if our location of our XYZ.
right. If we start collecting it now, it's possible that we can just directly link up to those other databases and we might have it easier to kind of get the contact information.
Yeah.
Also, it's easier to do records requests when you start getting those.
So one of the thoughts, because this RFP is difficult to pin down, some of these, I think that the emerging idea within DEC is to send out an RFI to get a sense for how should we craft the actual scope of work of this RFP. What would be a reasonable set of tasks that could be accomplished with a contract? Because for these reasons we've just been talking about, there's so many different things that we may or may not be able to do and get a comfort level with the information that comes back.
This idea that we're going to determine costs per unit of BMP or costs per unit of pollutant of concern and tie clean water service providers to it for funding for their operation and their implementation of BMPs is probably the most important and the hardest thing that we're asking with this piece of legislation that we get to implement. So getting a good handle on that is going to be critical and hard.
Or stepping back a bit. I mean, as Helen said, the ultimate goal is how do we determine how much should be allocated to a service provider? And we've been thinking cost per unit or cost per, but is there something even a different way to get at that allocation? I mean, performance for phosphorus reduction is a key thing that we need to track, but it's hard to know what is the cost per pound for this BMP versus that BMP. But ultimately, the goal is to pin some dollars to what the service providers will be planning and constructing.
Performance,
But we think it has to be pinned to phosphorus or pounds per this or pounds per acre or dollars per acre or something. But maybe
Maybe acreage is a better metric than phosphorus. Right now, we're all consumed with phosphorus, but that's not the whole state. Ultimately, we're going to need to answer to a larger stakeholder group in more places with more problems. And so maybe it's acres or like some other more transferable metric.
Right. So how do we know how much to give a service provider to do something, and what is that metric? And that's what I think this RFP is ultimately trying to get at. And
what do we really value here?
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that would be where some of the creativity would come in, as we ask for some information to guide future relationships with the service providers.
Right.
Hi, Mark. This is Holden. Can I ask a question about the timeline of the RFPs real quick?
Absolutely.
So we're trying to get our heads around kind of the order of operations. I know there's, in the Lake Champlain Basin, service providers will be determined November 2020, and I think the reduction targets are set to be determined November 2021, and somewhere in there will be a guidance released to clean water service providers. So I was wondering if you know the timeline on when those RFPs would be released, or when the RFI would be released in connection to those other events.
We are, I think, close to being able to release the RFP. We want to get it out as soon as we can so that we can at least give a consultant a year. I know that sounds like it's almost not enough, but
and then that would provide another year for DEC to take that information and do something with it.
Right.
So I think the initial thought was that the RFP would go out by the end of this month. Now we're thinking it might be an RFI, and then see what kind of information and ideas come back for the RFP. But basically, there's 2 years for the service providers to be given all their instructions and marching orders. And so this task of figuring out this RFP type of information, roughly a year to do that, and that would give DEC the other year to create its systems. Does that help, Holden?
Yeah, sorry, just had to find the unmute button. Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just going to remind everybody that it took 5 years to rewrite the
We're actually, I feel like we're going to need multiple consultants to maybe work together as a team. But.
And we have another 15 minutes to solve everything and get the service providers the information they need to get started.
Let's go.
Ready to go. Anything else on these O&M agreements, monitoring and verification, As we mentioned, the RFP there'll be an O&M manual coming out, so that they're just pulling together, I'm calling them BMP or maintenance BMPs, but that may not be the most accurate way to describe them. There'll be some fact sheets and some other information for people on O&M. One aspect that would be interesting to explore over the coming months is workforce development. How do we create an industry of folks like VYCC, landscapers, or who would be contracted by service providers or whomever to do maintenance? Some of that's already happening now on an informal basis, but I think to more institutionalize that process of, here's a cadre of industry professionals who are trained or certified or whatever it would be to maintain your system, and there's money for that. Any thoughts on that whole aspect of workforce development?
Something that I know they're doing with salt use for contractors is getting like a kind of summit together in the Lake Champlain area, inviting all types of contractors to it, and then going over best management practices and getting their names on this list, getting like a pledge to volunteer to use those practices in their environment to kind of do the same thing, but for the grass side of things instead of the treatment side of things.
So kind of use the SALT Summit as a model to get people together, get information disseminated, share ideas, start getting a group of...
I think it's called the de-icing.
And Holden, you know about that, the icing summit? Yeah, okay. So maybe we organize something like that where we just sort of get the ball rolling by bringing folks together, having discussions, sharing information, and then seeing where some of the low-hanging fruit might be.
Yeah, because it seemed to work that they started with kind of the state and municipal, and then it slowly became, the following year was pretty much all private sector people that wanted to join in here and see what they could do.
Okay, great idea.
Yeah.
Hi, Mark, can you hear me? This is Amy.
Yes, Amy, we can hear you.
We do have the Natural Shoreline Erosion Control Certification Program, and we've trained over 450 contractors. 100% of the participants have recommended the training to other contractors. So I would like to throw that out as an opportunity to make it thematic, and maybe for 2020 have a theme of the maintenance for these BMPs. Cool. But that is a legislated, mandated training that we are obligated to offer. It's been highly successful, and it's always in November every year. So it would be easy to expand that or take advantage of it and grow that for the maintenance and further training of the folks that move the dirt out there.
Very cool. So let's talk in the next week or so, Amy, just to see how we can at least plant a seed this November.
Yeah. Okay.
At least just make an announcement within that training or whatever makes sense. But.
And Mark, I was also thinking that, this is Karen, that it would be good to talk to people who maintain these and ask them what they would need. Do they need training, or do they actually just need a manual? Or is there a way that we can provide instructions about how to operate and maintain, or make sure that the owner, the landowner, has specific information so that he, and detailed information so that he can then provide it to the contractor that they hire? Because some of it's not, it's not too difficult or complicated.
Right.
Yeah. We have those fact sheets that we were.
Well, this is Amy again. This is a really timely webinar because, we've only been putting these things in for 5 years, 3 to 5 years. This is new stuff. And so we are just at the point where maintenance has become a question and an issue. But there's not one way of doing the maintenance, and there is, as you're realizing and why we're having this webinar, is there's not necessarily in a template and instruction booklet already out there. So it's going to have to be a big part of how the funding is given out to the service providers and to consultants and contractors doing the work, because you don't know what you're going to get hit with 5 years down the road if there's an intense storm or if something needs a lot of replacement plants that this is a big issue, but I don't think it's that easy to answer it. And I think it's going to be more, the expense has to be considered in the initial grant awards for doing this kind of work. It's got to be a bigger part of, it can't just be a 10-year contract, oh, sign it and you're responsible for it. We're field testing that out now, 5 years later. That just doesn't work. You have to have budgeted for it. So.
Yeah. Yep. I've been using the phrase green infrastructure 3.0. So I think we're moving from 2.0 to this new realm of 3.0, which has a lot of other aspects to it. We've got a system for designing these things, putting them in place, but now we need to understand the performance. Now we need to understand operation and maintenance. So we're entering it. So the next version of GI programming.
Good. I like that.
I think it'd be really interesting to figure out how to access the existing network of people that are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, when you started talking, I was thinking, oh, well, if you're looking for contractors, then you should talk to the Association of General Contractors. But then as I was thinking about it, I was like, well, is that really, are you looking for the initial build, or are you really looking for the maintenance contractors?
Yeah.
And are those people, do they have a network already? I don't know. I mean, a lot of water and sewer operators have those networks, but stormwater operations is new.
Right.
And the road crews and Vermont Road Scholars and others. I mean, at some point, I think we need to just get a bunch of people together and say, who else should be here? How do we start moving forward with this? Because there are folks who are doing maintenance well. What do they know, and what could they be sharing with others?
Well, it's a great business opportunity.
Exactly.
It's a big gap, and it's
to start a business.
Exactly.
Sure, start a business.
And then one more thing to kind of similar to that, I keep using the phrase maintenance-friendly design. Is it worthwhile to bring some designers and engineers together just to kick around? What are some attributes of a system that would be easy to maintain? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So that maybe we
yes.
tweak our BMPs a little bit, if need be, because something is a little easier to maintain, or what are your
There are a
thoughts?
lot of things we can do to design these for maintenance, especially when you're talking about structural and non-structural plans, BMPs. And some of it is as simple as installing a stake in the forebay with a stripe on it, and when you can't see the stripe, it's time to clean it out. Like just
Perfect.
small, simple things.
Yeah.
That
who is that speaking? Sorry.
This is Amy from Stone Environmental speaking.
Oh, hi, Amy. Okay, yeah.
But I think having that sort of design roundtable, because that's just one idea.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are dozens of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're gonna bring designers and engineers together, you should have somebody that is actually maintaining things actively to get their input.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe if there were a summit, there is both a design component and the maintenance practices component, and there's some cross-pollination between the two, as a way to at least get the juices flowing on initial conversation, and we can follow up on different threads in subsequent workshops or meetings or. Okay.
We don't always get that feedback from, like, as the designer on the ground. Like, we don't always get that that until, like, if it's an operationally permanent practice 5 years later.
Right.
When you're back out there recertifying, you're like, okay.
Well, and in my days as an engineer, I realized that when I hand over the drawings and think it's built, I'm gone. You know, I have no connection with that project again unless it's a certain type of project. But it's a common phenomenon where the designers often don't follow the life of a system.
And I think as we get more sort of stormwater utilities over in the MS4 communities and
Yeah.
more just eyes on BMPs that are already built, there's going to be a lot of good ideas about how to design for maintenance coming out of that.
And I've been hoping that at some point in the distant future, this maintenance thing becomes more akin to caretaking. Stewardship, caretaking. Yes, there'll be some mechanical processes and it's maintenance and stuff like this, but it's really stewardship and caretaking. So if we can, as these things are unfolding, we can just keep that ultimate idea in mind that we're trying to create a culture. What would be the best way to do that? Any other thoughts? I think we've got 6 minutes. This is very exciting.
Just quickly mention that we're going to be hiring Emily Peck, Assistant Stormwater Management Engineer, has left V-Trans to pursue a doctoral nursing program.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Logical transition.
So we're going to be recruiting, filling that position for the next couple months.
Cool.
To work closely with me.
This is Amy Peacock again. Sorry I came in late, and thanks for letting me share my 2 cents. I couldn't get logged on earlier, so. It's a great topic, Mark. Thanks.
Good to have you, Amy.
Thanks.
Well, Helen and Jordan are doing a lot of the heavy lifting here at DEC.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your ideas.
Yeah, we really appreciate the feedback as this is piloting.
Yeah.
That's great.
Awesome.
Oh, I have one sort of detailed question because we have a couple of construction projects that are either about to close out or will be closing out that are ERP funded. When, going back to the O&M agreement, like when are you expecting the agreements with DEC to kind of take over this hodgepodge of O&M agreements that have been happening with maybe the grantee, maybe others, maybe not at all? Like, what is your timeline?
I mean, I think right now we're asking, if you have a current grant, we are asking that you use our template.
Yeah.
I think, moving forward, because if the project started before we had the template, then we don't ask them to update it, do we?
Yeah, I think it should be part of the deliverables now. Like,
yeah.
We'll ask for an O&M agreement, I think. I don't know what we call it. Yeah, in the deliverables. So we would like you to use the template that's posted on our website.
All right. I think Dan is on the line too, so he's also hearing that.
Yeah.
Is great. So we'll need to work that out as some of our, especially our Morehouse Brook friend closes out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
This is the one I was particularly thinking of.
Okay.
It's going right now.
Which one?
Yeah. Let me know if you have questions.
Yeah.
What else? Are we done? Anything from the folks remotely listening in?
No, thanks for organizing, Mark.
You're welcome, Dan.
There are a bunch of links. Do we want
Yeah,
those to
I
be?
think we could send out people who submitted links in the chat. We could send out a follow-up email.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Because people up here don't have.
And I like the idea of a summit. I think that's something we can easily organize, and it will really inform some next steps and kind of start to build the community of practice a bit. Okay.
I like Amy's comment of sort of bringing together interested parties in O&M.
Absolutely.
Creating a bit of a community there, and I'd be really interested in trying to put together some of those trainings and informative things, that workforce development. I think could be a great way to then get a conversation going, cycling back into the design and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Might a summit in November or January be doable? It's probably not too difficult to pull together. Timing-wise, it's winter. That might be okay.
So January might be better.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Just in, yeah, just
The
in
tail
terms
end of the construction season and other things.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if we could plug it during the Lakeshore certification.
Absolutely.
that we have enough of a framework around it by then that we can say, to this group of service providers who are already required to take this training, like, there's a bigger conversation that we would love to have.
Yeah.
Also, it might be a good thought to have it when, like, part of the training to go out and visit, like, a BMP and see what, like, a good one looks like or something like that, just tying it together.
It would be hard in January.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, if there's a different
there
piece of
could be a
it.
benefit to November from that.
Yeah.
Or might a follow-up session.
Like a
Might a
tour
follow-up
of
session.
some in the area.
Yeah.
And, like, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how it should look.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Look at the future.
Yeah.
For the summit, when we get a bunch of different folks together, was it necessary to visit a thing, or could we just throw some images up and just have the discussion? Because we're trying to, I think, lay out some paths for this larger planning and it's a larger process. I mean, I know that at some point there'll be multiple workshops where it's hands-on, you're visiting things.
Maybe two different things.
Yeah, this is kind of just to get.
I don't think it's necessary for brainstorming.
Get the buzz going and get some ideas kicked around.
You might want to have like a snow backup date if we're going to do it in the winter. So
Yep,
a lot of landscaping companies
Perfect.
then do snow maintenance in the summer.
Yeah,
or in
winter's
the
probably
winter.
hard.
Sorry, not as long.
Okay.
Hopefully not in the summer. Hopefully it doesn't change.
Good.
Yeah, they do, both ends, so.
Yeah.
Great idea. Okay.
Is this going to be an in-person thing or?
Yeah, I think we get together in a room and we have some croissants and sit face to face.
Do that?
Sit face to face and break up into groups and come back and it's just kind of a brainstorming session to figure out the universe of what might be possible, what might be of interest, who else needs to be at the table, and then we can dig into this particular initiative, that particular initiative, at later dates. But as we've been realizing, it's a complicated issue with a lot of different actors, a lot of different needs, and we're not starting from scratch, but yet there are some things that we want to make sure that don't get missed.
I'm wondering, just as a parting thought, like there are more engineers on the phone and in this room than I've seen in a little while, which is great at the roundtable. We had a lot of them way back when, for the first couple meetings of this roundtable, and then that fell off. Some targeted engagement with the engineering community again as we're getting to a place now where we really need their insight.
Yep.
And in a lot of different ways, whether it's these cost metrics that we're trying to come up with, whether it's designing for maintenance, whether it's getting good input from the folks who are designing and implementing big things on what the costs and benefits really are. And they have a lot to offer, but they haven't been super engaged as a community in this roundtable and this set of discussions. So getting them back in the fold as we really start to ramp this up, I think would be really valuable if we can do it.
Yep, and they'll be organized a little better to help with whatever needs to be worked on.
And I think that, Tom is on, which is great from the Green Mountain Water side. Like, we can continue to reach out to the water, wastewater, stormwater folks. But if there's a way that we could potentially also reach out to like ACEC, BSC, it's the Vermont chapter of the American Council of Consulting Engineers, I think.
Engineering companies.
Thank you. Like, I always get it wrong. There's a couple of state level engineering organizations that might like some strategic phone conversations or emails with them would probably be enough to get them re-engaged. And this might be a good time to do that.
Great idea.
With training, would need some of the broader engineering groups like AFE or BSC. So there's like high level policy issues, but there's also like the nitty gritty detail of having, making sure that entry level staff are really getting exposed to some of these newer things. And maybe they're getting it in college, I don't know, but we may end up with a lack of capacity
We have
on
a
the
lack of capacity.
engineering side of it.
We already have it.
Be affecting that in the broader scale.
Workforce development is needed across the entire project development and implementation spectrum.
Right. Let's invite students too.
Yeah.
Well, Lake Champlain Sea Grant, we have on our staff a workforce development expert from UVM who's able to come in and help us think through how to approach the various workforce development needs and the processes that he does through his extension work, so that we have a methodical way to navigate that.
That's great.
Gary DeZiel. He's out of the St. Albans office with UVM Extension. This is awesome. You guys, anything else? Going once? Going twice? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?